right, we are live, and this is another session of African debates. And thanks for joining us again today. We are joined with Genesis and Lwandiso, and we are having another debate discussing matters Africa. And so, like, we want to find out, like, what worldview comports with reality, and whether this, and we are assuming the worldview that comports with reality will be able to give us solutions for Africa. So we have variable Lwandiso and Genesis to just go through this. Lwandiso being the Christian, and Genesis, I guess, maybe naturalist, maybe agnostic. He'll, I guess, discuss his position, and he will be starting off. But just before we start, wanted to share. So I'm part of an organization called Apologetics Kenya, and there's a website that has some articles that you can go through. So apologeticskenya.org/dispatches, and so like you can be able to just look at some articles there on atheism, on whether Jesus is white, basic Christian doctrine, and a couple of things. So this is just to whet your appetite a bit. And so without further ado, just want to start with Genesis. So Genesis is going to give us a 15-minute presentation of what he thinks reality is in accord with, what worldview is closest in harmony with reality, and whether that worldview gives solutions to Africa. So, like, whenever Genesis is ready, you can share your screen. I'm assuming the presentation is ready to be shared, and you can share it.
I'm ready.
Yeah, just share it, and then when you start speaking, then I will start timing. Yeah, so thanks guys for joining us, and for, I guess, those who don't know, Lwandiso is from South Africa, Genesis from Nigeria. So this time it's not a Kenyan affair. We are making it more African. So I'm grateful for us coming up from different parts of the continent. So Genesis, whenever you're ready, you can share. And oh, I just realized I need to make you co-host to be able to share. Maybe that's the problem.
It's telling me it's disabled.
Oh yeah, try now. I had not made you co-host. So now you should be able to do it. So sorry for that.
Yes.
Let me know if it comes through. Oh, I think is it dropped off, or oh, I think you're muted, Lwandiso.
I think he's gonna come back. He's probably going out to restart.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so I guess as guys wait for us. Oh yeah, I think he's already back. Oh yeah, so I think now we are sharing. Let's see it. It seems like there's still some challenges. So as we wait for Genesis to get his video or presentation back on, just a reminder, this is African Debates, and we are discussing which worldview comports with reality and which one gives solutions to Africa. And I guess as we also continue waiting, I think I could maybe share a bit from Genesis's page. So Genesis's page is actually called the Africa Enlightenment Center. And so he has some material where he discusses a lot to do with religion and what he deems as the negatives. So you can look at it. In fact, he had a recent discussion about who created evil. So you can look at it maybe after this debate. Let's see, I think Genesis is back. Okay, let's see if he's able to share. And if Genesis, if it does not share, maybe you could be able to send me and then I can try to share on my end. You can send it on WhatsApp or something. Oh yeah, it's here. Thank you.
Okay, you can see.
Yes, I can see. And when you start speaking, then I start timing the 15 minutes.
You can see it now. It's like the network is not very good.
Yeah, we can see.
All right.
So whenever you start, I'll start timing the 15 minutes.
Okay, any part of the world that you are watching, whether in the morning or afternoon or even night. I want to commend the host and also my opponents in this debate, for making the time out for us to talk about issues like this. So to start quickly, we're talking about which worldview comports with reality and which one gives solutions to our. And here I'm going to be making a case for, before I continue, like you said, my name is Dennis Zerima. I'm the leader of Africa Enlightenment Center. Now, to start with, what is naturalism? Naturalism is an approach to recognizing that moral values are properly founded on human nature and exceeding supernatural forces that demand some dogmatic, outrageous moral obedience to themselves such moral obligations. The naturalism of ancient of Thales of Miletus, who was the first Greek philosopher known to history as the father of metaphysics, that is studies on how the cosmos was constructed, that the world existed without a God creator factor. Then you talk about people like Protagoras. He shifted focus from the natural world to human issues. He introduced the idea of belief. He put forth the truth that it was the character of a person who held a belief that determined its worth, coining the phrase. Some of the people that started this whole idea at this job tend to say that the Greek philosophical ideas, Greek philosophy, is the invention of Christianity's worldview rests, ideology, for more than 1,000 years, led to the Enlightenment struggle. 18th and early that we have today. Because the Roman only they were called humanists, as many who profess humanistic ideas were murdered. Christians like Erasmus and Luther, who were influencing textual criticism of the Bible, especially the New Testament, on which the Christian worldview is largely based. To Luther, nailing 95 theses, corruption. This led to his persecution and subsequent incarceration. Also, we shaped great love initiated the process of naturalistic to try and understand the workings of the universe.
Wow, sorry about that, guys. I think we Genesis dropped off, or but I see he's still back. So let's just wait a bit. Sorry for the technical issues. I think we'll probably just wait a bit and see if we'll be able to get back. So I think we are having some technical difficulties, but hopefully we will get back in with Genesis. And just as we wait for Genesis to get back, I would also just like to share from the Bizrot Africa, which is Luandiso's page. And so Luandiso should be giving us the next opening statement. This is his page, and it's called Bizrot for Africa, and maybe he will tell us more about what the Bizrot is. And so he has some reaction videos, and he's also some popular speakers in Africa who are critical of the Christian faith, and also a debate or discussion is had with Genesis previously, so you can check it out later. That's Bizrot for Africa. So let me just check if we are okay. Still see he's still out, so just give us a second. Sorry guys for the challenges that we are having. Just a second. Let me see if he's able to get back. Oh, sorry for that. As we wait for Genesis to get back in, maybe those who are in the YouTube live stream, you can maybe let us know what interests you in this discussion, like what your worldview is, and whether you think it helps Africa, and or maybe if you think you need to change your worldview, and because you found another one that will help Africa, maybe you can put that in the YouTube live stream as we wait for Genesis to come back in. In fact, I'm just thinking of starting off, maybe restarting with Luandiso, if you would not mind. Maybe we can do your opening statement. The only problem is that he's not, he might not be able to join us, or at least listen to the opening statement. So that might be challenging. But I think you can be able to start off and give us your opening statement. And then when he comes back in, we'll see how we can include him. So maybe Luandiso, you can just unmute and then share, then start as we wait for him to get back in.
All right, thank you so much, my host, for having us today. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you. So I'm going to be making a case for Christianity as a worldview, but not just a worldview, but a worldview that really provides solutions for our continent. I think that it's a very important topic because, you know, our continent is in a very terrible state of affairs at the moment. And I do believe that it's important that we have the right worldview, because the right worldview will enable you to begin to find solutions in your life. So really having the right worldview does enable you to begin to have solutions. But I think that the minute you have the right way of seeing the world, you sort of set yourself up to begin to live differently in the world. So this is a very important topic, as it's not just a spiritual or philosophical discussion, but it has implications on how we live our lives. So I do believe that Christianity provides solutions for Africa. It has been providing solutions for Africa, you know, beginning just with the work that was done even by the missionaries. We know that they were not perfect, and there's a lot of things that they have done that have not been the right things to do. But as well, they've also contributed to a number of good things in education and so on. But when we come and look at naturalism, so naturalism is the philosophical belief that everything arises from natural properties and causes, and supernatural or spiritual explanations are automatically excluded. Now, straight away, you will begin to see, if you know anything about science, you know, if everything can be explained in a naturalistic way, then straight off the bat, you can see that you have problems, because first of all, you still need to account for our own universe. Where did our universe come from? Now, we know scientifically that from Big Bang cosmology, that the universe has a beginning. You look at even people like Einstein once said that his biggest blunder was to make the assumption that the universe is eternal. And so he changed his position when he began to see the observations made by Edwin Hubble, who actually observed that the universe began at a certain point, and so space, time, and matter all began at that particular point. Now, if you say everything can be explained by naturalism, you've got to explain then what can cause everything that we see today, the world and so on, to come into existence, you know, by itself without an actual cause that can make it. And so these explanations, straight off the bat, you can see that, you know, you're not going to find solutions, because it doesn't take into account, you know, the universe itself. I mean, if you're wrong on the universe, how can you be right on Africa? Now, Genesis, I know, is also an agnostic, and so he's not just somebody who sort of believes in the natural world or a naturalistic framework, but he's also an agnostic. And I think that agnosticism, for an example, doesn't have the ability to engage deeper, you know, philosophical and existential questions. For an example, where did we come from? If we ask that question, you will not find that answer from a naturalistic framework, and you will not find it from agnosticism. So there's a lack of explanation, you know, explanatory power when it comes to fundamental aspects of reality, you know, such as morality. How do we account for objective morality? You know, if the universe, for an example, is a product of random cells and matter and all those things coming together, can I truly say I have purpose in this world? If when I die, that's the end of it, you know, is there really purpose? Is there really hope, you know, for people out there in Africa who look at this world and go, man, it's such a mess, you know, I'm at the bottom of the chain, and all those sort of things. But if that person obviously dies, and we believe that when you die, it's the end, there's actually no hope for you as well. And even things like design, if you look at the world, we see that there's so much design. I mean, how do we get things like design? out of a naturalistic framework that basically assumes that, I think it's C.S. Lewis who once made the statement that if you can assume that all the design and complexity that we find in the universe can come, from the Big Bang, but through random cells coming together, it's almost like shaking milk and hoping to receive the map of London. It's virtually impossible. There's also a tendency to dismiss important theological and philosophical discussions without really properly considering them. So really my question would be, which Genesis needs to answer, first of all, does God exist or does he not exist? Because the reality probably lies between these two positions. It's either God exists or he doesn't exist. This is what Blaise Pascal tried to point out when he, mentioned that the existence of God is like, heads or tails. It's like two coins. Eventually it's going to land on one side of the coin. And so people can't really say, I don't know that there is a God. And if you are offering to Africans a framework that says, we must say we don't know. Now, what we're actually saying, is that they must live in a false reality, because the reality is either God exists or he doesn't exist. So agnosticism and naturalism also kind of has that problem where it really doesn't want to provide solutions, but rather would like to make a claim that the other side doesn't provide solutions. But I believe Christianity is a worldview that is grounded in faith. It's grounded in reason and historical evidence. If you look at the Bible, we don't simply believe in the Bible just because it's in relation to religious beliefs, but it's really grounded in historical data. We believe that Jesus is a historical person who lived in the world. There's enough historical evidence that Jesus Christ was somebody who lived in this world and he modeled what God would be like. We believe that if God exists and that God exists, he would then reveal himself to the people in the world. And we believe God has revealed himself through Jesus Christ. And because God has revealed himself, then there is meaning, then there is reality. We can affirm that there is reality, there is ultimate reality. Also, Christianity claims to provide comprehensive answers, to questions like, relating to reality, to purpose, to existence. If you look at the book of Genesis, it begins with saying, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so we can see that, man, if somebody is asking the question, and I think Africans like to ask the question, where did I come from? And I think sometimes Africans always want to ask the question in relation to their forefathers, and you'll find that they'll have these sort of genealogies telling them where they come from. And so one of the things that we want to know as Africans is, where did we come from? You're not going to find that answer obviously coming from agnosticism or naturalism, because when the African wants to know where we came from, they're not just asking, where did I come from in relation to my parents or my great-grandfathers, but where did they come from? And we believe that ultimately, in the end, we will arrive at the first cause who created everything. And that answer will not be provided by agnosticism. It is found in Christianity. And so this is the case that we're trying to make today. Christianity is consistent with reality. Four major points. Really, we can make an argument and ground morality in Christianity in the existence of God. And so therefore, because God exists, and in Christianity, we believe that the basis for all morality flows from the character of God. Now, a lot of people can assume that what we're saying is, if you are not a Christian, you cannot be a moral person or do moral things. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that even though you'll find that in the Bible, we have the 10 commandments, those are grounded in the character of God. But you'll find even here in Southern Africa, we have, a moral system.
Or 3 minutes
Sorry?
left to the end of the opening statement.
Sure. We have, the system of Ubuntu, right? That's a moral system telling people that I am, because you are. It encourages Africans to live in harmony with one another. And so you can go to India, you can go to China, and you can find all these things. And it's consistent with what the Bible says, that the Lord has written in the hearts of the Gentiles, his moral law. So we can know what is right and what is wrong. But the question is, where do we ground it? If God does not exist, it is left to humans for them to make up what is morality. There's also the argument from design. When we look at the world, we see design. We see that there's intelligence in the world. And so there's no way that you can find intelligence if the universe, as it is claimed by Big Bang cosmology, if the universe began to exist, something caused the universe to exist, we cannot have design in the world as, expansive as the world is, as complex as it is. It cannot come randomly to us. So for us, the concept of intelligent design suggests to us that all these complexities, it's more plausibly attributed to an intelligent creator. So that for us is one of the reasons why we think Christianity is consistent with reality. Another one is also to say, if God does not exist, then human capacity for reason and rationality, it becomes a bit of a puzzle. Einstein once made the statement, the one thing that is incomprehensible about the universe is the fact that it's comprehensible. Why can we comprehend the universe? Why does the universe work? It's so massive and complex, and yet it functions, And so for us, we cannot find all of those things without an ultimate reality, which is God, where we can ground all of these things. So that's my opening statement.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Lwandiso, for the opening statement. Sorry for the challenges today with the time, and but hoping that at least we've been able to get the Christian perspective on the correct world view and solutions it brings to Africa. And now it'll just be a quick cross-examination, maybe 2-3 questions that you can engage Lwandiso on. Genesis, I hope you are back on. You can unmute and show your video. See, there's still a bit of a challenge. See, he's back. Genesis, are you able to unmute and show your video?
He just sent a message there in the group.
Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, my video. Can you see me?
I can't see the video.
You can see me now. The network
No, I
out
can't.
here. But you can hear me now. You can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes, and we can see you now also. So I'm hoping now at least the video and the audio is okay. You can ask at least 3 questions just to for what you've heard. I know it's probably been difficult because you've probably been in and out, but for the little that you've heard from his opening statement, are there any questions you'd like to examine him on just quickly, and then we get to your opening statement again?
Okay, let me ask him a few questions because he talked about the issue of subjective morality and objective morality and the existence of
and
God,
then
that
also
we cannot doubt the existence of God.
And then maybe I should emphasize.
Let me ask you,
Genesis. Maybe it will be just 2 minutes. It's just a short cross-examination, and then he will maybe give a quick response for like 2 minutes, and then we get into your opening statement. Yeah. So it won't be. It's not a long cross-examination.
So no problems. So the only thing I want to ask him first of all, he talked about the existence of God. System is shorting.
Are you able at least to work on to use audio for the moment, even if the video is not working,
Yeah, that's all
we
right.
can maybe work with your audio and then we can get to the video when it starts working. Oh, Genesis, you're still there? Okay, I see you're on, Genesis. Sorry for the challenges that you are having. So for those who are joining us, as we are waiting for Genesis to work on his audio and video, we are discussing which worldview is comports with reality and which one gives solutions for Africa. And so we've just heard from Wandiso, the Christian representative today, giving a Christian worldview and how it helps Africa. And now we are to get into a cross-examination. And maybe we might be able to change some things up because of the time. When Genesis comes back, we might probably get into his opening statement and then get into some sort of conversation because of the time, so that at least we can get as much in as possible. For the time being, I see he stepped out a bit. So I guess let's just wait a bit. As we are waiting, maybe Lwandiso can, okay. As we are waiting him for Genesis to join fully, we can, maybe Lwandiso, you can give us a short summary of Bizrot for Africa, like what you do there,
Sure.
as we wait for Genesis to get back.
No problem. Thank you so much. So Bisrat for Africa really wants to engage Africans. It wants to engage the questions that are being asked by our young people. And so the need for us as the church to not shy away from these questions, to really engage. And I really do appreciate the way that Africans have been, engaging intellectually. And I think even on this platform, African Debates Channel, it's really amazing to see just the high level discussions that are happening. And I think that I'm also even more encouraged that the church can be a part of it. And I think that's what it really is about, is the fact that we can have a voice in these subjects. It's really about bringing God into these complex subjects, whether it's related to gender-based violence, feminism, like we saw the previous one that came up. But also, Africans are questioning. They want to know their African identity. They want to know who they are. And so we believe at Bisrat for Africa that we answer those questions, not just on a superficial level, but really the question of who am I can be best understood when we understand who God is. I think when we know who God is, we can better understand ourselves. And there's no one who can better explain or tell you who you are than the one who is the creator, who created you. So that's what Bisrat for Africa is. I'm based in South Africa, but I'm willing to engage with people on the continent. I have a lot of respect for Apologetics Kenya as well. And so, yeah, I'm enjoying just seeing all, it's almost all four corners of the continent engaging in these topics. So it's very encouraging.
I'm also encouraged. Sorry. I was just working on my audio, was a bit problematic, but yeah. So I'm also in agreement, and also I think Genesis is back, and if his audio is okay, I think we'll have to switch things up a bit in terms of the format because of the time spent. I would like Genesis to be able to actually do his opening statement instead. And maybe, I don't know, maybe because of time, you can see how you can summarize your opening statement. You can take as long as you would want to take. And then after that, we'll get into some sort of conversation. So like whenever Genesis, you're ready, you can just start your opening statement. So I'm just waiting for you to start speaking. You are muted. Yes, you are unmuted. Now you can speak.
Okay, can you hear me? The network and
Yes.
the app is misbehaving. What I was asking before, we talked about the issue of subjective and objective morality and God. You know that he assumed that everybody believes that there is a God, you know, and all that, and everybody, you know, believes that there is a proof there is a God. But the question is, what proofs do you have that there is a God to whom, you know, our morality should be subjected to his whatever they call his moral codes, because he's based his argument on morality. So what is the proof that this God exists and these codes, whatever you call the moral codes, belongs to him and we should be subjected to them?
All right. So you're asking for the proof for the existence of God. So I did mention a little bit my arguments, why I believe there's an existence, you know, of God. And maybe you can clarify as well when you come in, because I'm also struggling to understand your position with regards to the existence of God, but I think I'll get it a bit later. So my case was to say, you know, the worldview of naturalism says everything can be explained on the basis of natural things. But the question then comes back to say, you know, if the universe, as we're told in Big Bang cosmology, that it began to exist, if you look at, for an example, Newton will say, you know, in his theory of general relativity, that matter, time, and space all began at the Big Bang. So there was a point in which all of those things didn't exist and they began to exist. You look at also Hubble's observations, you know, that everything did begin at that point. Now, my argument was to say that we cannot have nothing producing something. In other words, there must be an uncreated first cause that must have caused all of those things. But naturalism does not account or cannot explain if the universe, time, space, and matter began to exist, what caused it to exist. And so you can only find that answer in a theistic worldview, in a Christian worldview, which you cannot find in a naturalistic worldview.
And maybe Genesis, if you are able to, I was hoping that maybe you could also touch on your opening statement, because I'm trying to switch things up a bit because of the time has been messed up a bit because of the in and out. So if you are able to share your opening statement and maybe touch on the areas which you feel are most pertinent to your main arguments today. And then after going through that, we can now get into a discussion mode. I think that would probably help us to progress further. So I don't know if you're ready to do that, Genesis. Or you can even send me your presentation if you're not able to share it, maybe on WhatsApp or here on Zoom. See you've joined. Just a second. Okay, just a sec. Okay, so as we are waiting.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. In fact, it's very clear.
It's all right. So I want to quickly, because all he has said is just conjectures, because he assumes that he doesn't know my position, you know, on this God issue, trying to dodge the question. You said nothing can exist without nothing. So where did God come from? Because God himself can also not exist without nothing. So naturalism says there's no God, And then you say there is a God that exists without nothing. Nothing cannot exist without nothing. So why is it that, you know, you believe God, you said you believe? That is an assumption. So it's safe to assume. But through naturalistic principles, we've been able to find out that a lot of things that we use today, a lot of things that we are used to today, were things that were discovered by observation. So where did God come from? If we are to even tell that part, that's the next question I will ask.
And
All right, so
I think, Londiso, maybe after you respond to that, I would like Genesis to also go to his opening statement. I would like him to be able to at least touch on the main points of his opening statement. And
Okay.
then after Londiso has responded, and then after touching on the main points of the opening statement, then we can get into a conversation. So Londiso, you can respond to what he just asked, and then
yeah, so I just want to quickly touch on why I wasn't sure about his worldview, because I think from our discussions, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, he said he was an agnostic, right? Agnosticism is different to atheism. Atheism says there is no God, which is what he's now saying. But I think initially his position was to say he's an agnostic. I mean, we have evidence from emails. That's why I was saying it is very difficult to make a debate when you're not quite sure where the person stands. So maybe a bit later, clarity needs to be provided as to the worldview there. But my case for the existence of God, like I said, it wasn't based on an assumption, but I made the case, you know, based on the Big Bang Theory, you know, which is embraced by most scientists, you know, that they believe that the universe began to exist. But when we talk about God, right, remember, it's very important that you understand that if you are arguing against the existence of God, you have to first define who God is. And so our definition of who God is an uncreated first cause, right? And so there are things in the world, you know, that, you know, everything in the world basically is contingent. But God, for an example, is immanent in that he doesn't need to be created. Because, for an example, if we're talking about God, defining God, we're talking about somebody who's uncreated. And so it really comes down to how you define God. If that person is somebody who was created, we're not talking about the same person, right? So that's my response.
Can I ask one more question?
Or maybe you can maybe get into more questions after you've done your opening statement. So you can go through it as fast as possible or as slow as possible, so that you can touch on all the important points you wanted to share on your opening statement. And then now we can continue the conversation. So let me know if you're able to share. You should be able to share, because I've maybe
I'm trying to open the document because I have to change my system.
And if it's a challenge, you can send me, I share for you.
Okay. I'm just trying to scroll to the document now. Okay. Naturalism. Is it? Oh. Okay, I found the document.
All right.
Oh, it's saying it must be PDF. Oh, sorry.
Should be able to. If it still causes issues, you can maybe send to me via WhatsApp, and I share for you.
Okay, let me try and send it to you right now by WhatsApp. Come in. Let me go to WhatsApp and try and send it. I will drop it in the group right now. Let me check.
Okay.
Browse documents. Where is my files? Okay. It's loading. I think it should be here. Where is it? Where is it? N G K L M. Okay, I think I found it.
All right, and even as we wait for the sharing,
I'm
for
already
those who
sending
are
it.
just okay, yes,
I
I've
sent it.
seen it. All right. So even as I'm downloading it, for those who are joining us, sorry for the few technical issues, but we are discussing what worldview is comports with reality and which gives solutions for Africa. So I've just found it. Let me just share my screen, and I hope now we can see it. Then now we can. I will move as you guide me, so you can start speaking.
Okay. So slide one, like I started with, which worldview comports with reality and which one gives solution to Africa, Christian or naturalism? The case for naturalism. Before I continue, let me just streamline something that Luandisi said, that he doesn't know where I stand, so he cannot answer, some of my questions. That is a kind of laughable, but anyway, the truth is that human beings are evolving. That is the reason why I stand with, one of the reasons why I stand with naturalism, because we are evolving. And the truth is, we move from one ideology and understanding to the other based on how we understand the world works. And that is progressivism, which is lacking in Christianity. So to continue, what is naturalism? His own definition of naturalism, I doubt that's what naturalism is actually. But naturalism is an approach to life based on reason and our common humanity, recognizing that moral values are properly founded on human nature and experience alone, and not some absent, unseen supernatural forces that demand some dogmatic, outrageous moral obedience through humans who cannot themselves fulfill such moral, obligations. The naturalism was basically a rediscovery of ancient humanistic ideas promoted by the likes of Thales of Miletus, who was the first Greek philosopher known to history as the father of metaphysics. His studies are based on how the cosmos was constructed, that the world existed without a God creator factor, which there are a lot of evidences to that effect. Pythagoras, he was the father of mathematics. Protagoras, he shifted focus from the natural world to human issues. He introduced the idea of subjectivity to the concept of belief, which my friend talked about. He put forth the truth that it was the character of a person who held a belief that determined its worth, coining the phrase, man is the measure of all things. Then Socrates, Plato, or Plato, whatever you call it, and then Aristotle and so many others. The next slide, please. So at this juncture, it is pertinent to say that Greek philosophical ideas influenced both Judaism and Christianity. These ideas I'm talking about, they've been there before Christianity came on board, even before Judaism, from which Christianity was adapted before they came on board. These ideas have been there. And like I said, they were resurrected in the 18th century stroke 19th century. So I'm saying that Christianity in so many ways, including the invention of the Jesus character on which Christianity's worldview rests. Next slide, please. The failure of Christianity, which was a child of circumstance invented from Judaism and Greco-Roman mythological ideology for more than 1,000 years, led to the Enlightenment struggle in the late 18th and early 19th century, which is the beginning of naturalism in the modern era. And continue, the next slide. Because the Roman Catholic Church, which was the sole authority of governance at that time, was against humanism, only a few people were able to stand the fire of persecution for being humanistic. A lot of them professed their faith publicly, but their works testify they were called humanists, as many who professed humanistic ideas were murdered. Next slide, please. Christians like Erasmus and Luther, who were influenced by humanistic ideas, proposed reforms to the church, which were based on humanist textual criticism of the Bible, especially the New Testament, on which the Christian worldview is largely based. This led to Luther nailing 95 Theses, challenging the papal authority and criticizing its corruption. This led to his persecution and finally his incarceration. Next slide. So Greek philosophy shaped the modern world. the great philosophers mentioned above, initiated the process and still influence our understanding of the world today. These scholars initiated the use of reason and logic, which are both naturalistic, to try and understand the workings of the universe and cosmos. And you can know this has given us what even this medium we're using was a product of revolutionary ideas through naturalistic thinking. So naturalistic, both naturalistic, to try and understand the workings of the universe or the cosmos. These men dealt majorly with natural science. Then it was known as philosophy, rather than, morality. So it was based not on morality, a deviation from morality, because the Christian worldview tried to, make everybody moral. And they themselves were not able to fulfill those moral conditions. They said, because you must be moral to be able to be a good person, to do good things. But so much good has been done to the world through humanistic ideas. Then when religious morality held sway, next, that's slide 10, please. When religious morality held sway, it was believed that the causes of all problems were gods, because there were so many gods, of which the God of Christianity was one of them. The influence of Greek philosophy on Christianity cannot be overemphasized. Even the creation of Jesus Christ was influenced by Greek philosophy, where the absentee God of Judaism was given a human figure, a figurative, human being, to represent him as God on earth, following Greek philosophy and, the Roman philosophy. So we can say that you cannot overemphasize, because even the Septuagint was now translated into Greek, which led to so many errors in mistranslation and all that, and so many things that were added to the Septuagint during that period when it was translated into Greek. Greek education and all that, Greek citizenship and all that was all over the place at that time. So the educational background has been traced, these Greek philosophers that shaped the modern world through these ideas, the educational background has been traced to Egypt in Africa, believed by many scholars to be the cradle of human civilization. Next. So religions like Christianity claim we need morality in the world to avoid chaos, but we cannot be moral without religion. We can be moral, but we can be moral without religion. And that is having empathy. Christianity's loyalty is believed to be to an invisible God who dictates the affairs of men, but that we know is just an illusion. There is no God that dictates the affairs of men as far as reality is concerned. We can see it everywhere. If there was a God, most of the things that are happening wouldn't have been happening. Like in those days, when a volcano erupts, they say the gods are angry. But today we know the reason through geography why volcanoes erupt. Today, we see a lot of things happening, and we can know that this is the reason why this phenomena is taking place. This thing is happening, and not any God. And you can look at the Bible, it's replete in the Bible that they believe, even the causes of disease, they believe it was demons. But Luadiso can agree with me that demons are not the causes of diseases. That's because of, naturalism. Next slide, please. So, with the divisions in Christianity alone, it is obvious the Christian worldview has not and cannot help the world. With over 45,000 different church denominations with different leadership and beliefs in Africa alone, I don't think we need a soothsayer to know that Christianity cannot work for us. Christianity believes the cause of human suffering is disobedience to the laws of an absentee, non-existent God. Next slide. Where is Africa today? The influx of evangelical Christianity into Africa in the 1970s worsened the situation of the continent, causing a decline in human capital development as Africans resorted to seeking spiritual solutions to problems rather than naturalistic solutions, which were not to be found. There was no spiritual solutions to be found. Today, Africans are now resorting to naturalistic solutions. And the problem is there are no hospitals that were built. We have millions of churches. How many hospitals do we have in Africa? How many institutions, educational institutions do we have in Africa? They are absent. Continue, next slide. Conclusively, any worldview based on a God or a supreme deity cannot help anyone. There is no place in the world where it has worked. It amounts to dictatorship that is led by a few bigoted, dogmatic individuals to the detriment of the rest. We can see that in the Roman Empire. We are supposed to explore, and even in some countries in the world today, especially in Africa. We are supposed to explore the world and learn based on the resources we have and what's available to take decisions either individually or collectively. We are to explore what works for us individually and collectively in Africa in terms of morals, politics, economy, etc., and agree on them and work towards actualizing them, laying emphasis on critical thinking and science and technology. If you look at Africa today, Africans have adopted democracy. Where did democracy come from? It's Greek ideology, Greek philosophy that was not based on any God. Those ideas and philosophies were started far back before Christianity ever was born. Even out of those ideologies, Christianity was born, but they couldn't even get it right. Next slide, please. Japan, Sweden, Australia, China, etc. have used humanistic ideas to build their societies. Today in Africa, despite the huge presence of Christianity and Islam, we rely heavily on the West and Asia, which is not supposed to be. It is time Africans embrace humanistic ideas and redeem this continent. And that is not just about Christianity alone, because even the African traditional religion did not give us what we want, though there are some of the moral foundations we had are from even the African traditional religion. Christianity came and destroyed everything. Today, Christianity is even battling, to secure its own, to save its own face, even in the continent and in the world at large. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that enlightening opening statement. And I guess it's in the middle of the debate, but it's still the opening statement. And so like right now, what we want to get into a conversation section. So even before we get into the conversation, so this is African Debates. We are discussing what which worldview comports with reality, as well as which one will give solutions to Africa. So I'm hoping we can have a lot more conversation on which worldview is bringing solutions to Africa, as much as we will discuss which worldview is actually correct, and also like what kinds of, how a particular worldview gives an actual solution. So I'm hoping in the discussion, we can actually have that discussion, because that's where maybe the rubber meets the road. And also just to emphasize on African Debates, I'm hoping we can be able to promote more conversation than fighting, because even as right now, as we see there was an attempted coup in the DRC, in the Sudan, there's constant fighting. In North Africa, we have issues of people thinking Black people are being harmed. There are those who will complain that, oh, there's xenophobia in South Africa. There are those who would say, oh man, there's increased Boko Haram encroachment in Nigeria. There are those who would say, there are so many issues, and there's a lot of animosity. And so like, I'm hoping this platform will help us do more talking than fighting, because I'm of the opinion that when people don't talk, they end up fighting. And I think that's what we see. So at least I'm hoping African Debates will be able to be a platform for people to talk, so that they can disagree strongly like Lwandiso and Genesis are, but still in a cordial manner, such that they don't fight after this. And I assure you that they will not be fighting after this. They'll just be disagreeing in terms of argumentation, which is actually I'm hoping this will be an example for other Africans and other people around the world. And so I guess without further ado, I think we can get into a discussion, and at some point I will stop us to look at some questions that have been thrown out. So maybe Lwandiso, you can, so this will just be an interrupted conversation, but hopefully each one gets enough time to talk. Let's say at least for the next 10 minutes. Let's see how we can do it.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm just wanting to ask questions on the worldview that he holds. So first question to you, Genesis, maybe I can ask two questions that go together. Does God exist, or does he not exist? And, or would you take the position to say we don't know that God does not exist? Which one would you kind of say is more consistent with what you believe?
All right, I will not dodge your questions like you did mine. I will answer that.
No, I wasn't dodging.
So you dodged it. So God does not exist. For me, for me, God does not exist. And if at all there is anything like a supernatural being that exists, there is no proof so far. Like everything you are using right now, technology you are using exists because it was tested, it was proven, you can see it, you can feel it. But there is no evidence whatsoever that God exists. Until if I see an evidence, a credible evidence, then we all know that there is a God or a supernatural being, that exists. So I don't believe there is a God, that especially the God of Christianity does not exist.
Okay, so would you call yourself an agnostic?
What I call, for me, I don't see any big deal in, it's not cultism that you must identify with a cult group and all that. All I do is I believe that knowledge liberates man. So I share knowledge, I get knowledge and I share knowledge. And I'm speaking from the standpoint of the knowledge that I've acquired so far and the understanding that I have, that naturalism is the best alternative for humanity.
Sure, but did you not say that you are an agnostic?
Yeah, that was some time ago.
No, it was in the build-up to the debate. And the reason why I find that confusing is
sorry,
now you
say no, not
it
confusing.
does confuse. I mean, you can't say I'm
the
dodging.
debate. There was no specifics that you must identify as an agnostic. It was which worldview comports with reality, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, but which is the worldview that I see? Which is the
worldview that I see that comports with reality is naturalism. It's not about what you write. For instance, you are a South African, I'm a Nigerian. So what is that? So
no,
I'm a
it
Nigerian.
does.
Can't we discuss issues that have to do with
does
Zimbabwe,
make a difference.
even though I'm a Nigerian? We can discuss issues that have to do with Zimbabwe and all that. That's it.
No, remember, I want to understand you, right?
No,
and
you
I
are
want
trying
you to understand
you are delaying
me.
us. You are delaying us. Please move on to better issues. Whether I'm agnostic or whatever, it doesn't matter here. The debate does not state whether it's between an agnostic or whatever. The debate says what comports with reality. You stood for Christianity.
Yeah, but
and
what is it? What is it that comports with reality with you? Are you saying God does not exist, or are you saying you don't
It's not
know?
about me. It's about the world. It's not about me per se. I'm just one individual among the millions of people. You are debating me, but you are debating my ideas, not my person. If you want to attack my person, tell me, and we'll do the going to personality attacks.
But I mean,
so focus on the debate.
Going to debate, for an example, if I say I'm a Muslim and then today I come to the debate and I say I'm a Christian, you are preparing for the debate, right? And you prepare with that worldview in mind. So I just think that that's important that we get that. And if you're saying that
there was no worldview, there was no specific worldview given to us that it must be agnostic or Kemet or whatever. The debate says which worldview. So I got to say the one that I feel comports with reality. That's the debate. That's the thing. The theme is there. It's written all over the place. The flyers, the viewers can see the flyer. You can check out the flyer and you will see what is there. There's no specification about that.
No, I get the flyer.
Don't make it personal.
I was just making a point.
Go to the issues. Yeah, go to the issues.
Okay, so if you say there's no God, sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
I was actually saying maybe we can focus more on maybe explaining why the worldview we are proposing comports to reality, so that we can have that as a discussion, and then also talking about, because now there's the issue where maybe the worldview that comports to reality has no solutions. I don't know if you've thought about that.
Okay,
and maybe the one that does not comport with the reality is the one that has solutions. So like I'm wondering if it's possible to have that discussion, or maybe it's the one that comports with reality that has solutions. So like there are three levels to the conversation. Huh? How your worldview comports with reality, whether it has solutions or not. Yeah. Okay. So
maybe I think that's what my brother should be doing, but he's trying to attack my personality instead.
No, I'm not attacking your personality, but it does confuse. It does. Really
not really, because if you know what you are doing, if you know what you are saying, that means you are confused because you don't know where Christianity stands. If you know what Christianity stands, you focus on Christianity, whether you are debating Kemet or whatever, it's the same thing. Your worldview, or does your worldview change?
It's not the same.
According to who you are debating? Does your worldview change according to who you are debating? I don't understand that. So you can go to the issues.
My questions to you, you see, remember, for you, I'm a Christian, so you know what you are dealing with. my understanding is that you were agnostic, and an agnostic is different to an atheist. But be that as it may, let's move on. But yeah, those are not the same thing. It's important that when you are going to debate, that you truly represent who you are. So,
and that is who I am. I represent myself.
Okay, so if you say God does not exist, define this entity that does not exist.
I think we have moved past that God does not exist or not. The coordinator or
No, define. If you say God does not exist, define who it is that doesn't exist.
If God does not exist,
define God. Who is it that doesn't exist?
I have told you before that God does not exist, especially the Christian God does not exist, and there are proofs to that. Maybe that will be debate for another day. You exist, but, I exist. Okay, I can see you. I can see you.
So it's not that you believe God does not exist. You believe the Christian God does not exist. Is that what
I don't believe. I know. I don't work based on belief.
Be that as it may, Genesis. Be that as it may, I'm trying to understand. You don't believe the Christian God exists, or you just believe that God does not exist? Which one is it?
I believe that God does not exist, including the Christian one. Maybe let me put it that way for you. Yes.
Define this person that doesn't exist. That's what I was asking you. You went a bit on a side.
Because there's no evidence.
Define this person. If you say God does not exist, define who is it that does not exist.
I think you are taking much time to measure on things that don't matter in this debate right now, because that doesn't matter right now. What matters is what worldview.
I'm asking in relation to
this is not time to ask questions anyway. We are told to actually look at what worldview.
And now when I ask you questions,
I've answered you. I've answered this question severally. You are still repeating the same questions to try to trap me in a way. You can't trap me.
That doesn't exist. Okay, then
what does that got to do with the worldview?
I asked him a question.
What has that got to do with the worldview? That has nothing to do with the worldview. You are just reality.
Remember, we're trying to find out which one is coherent, right?
Oh yeah. So maybe
let me talk about my worldview and why it is needed in Africa, why Africa needs it. That's what you said we should do, but he's trying to do another thing. Now, let me say something here.
Remember, you had a cross-examination. You asked me a question, and I was asking, but it's fine.
I answered you already. What are you looking for? I've answered your question.
I was asking
I've answered it.
Define this person that you say does not exist.
How can can you define what does not exist?
No, I'm asking you.
You can't define what does not exist.
You said
there's
God
no definition.
Does not exist.
God has no definition.
Okay, who doesn't exist? You tell us who doesn't exist.
I guess maybe
please. That's not what we are doing here, please.
Also on this one, Genesis, maybe to help us.
He's deviating from the debate.
It's okay. So maybe you could help us to understand which how. I'm assuming you are defending naturalism. So maybe you can tell us how that worldview comports with reality and what solutions it will bring to Africa. And then,
of course,
and then maybe you can just give a summary. Because you've already given an opening statement. So maybe just a summary of what you think makes naturalism true and solutions it gives, maybe in 1 minute, and then Lwandiso can respond, and then we see how we move from there.
It's all right. When you look at the world, the world is natural. Everything. You are seeing me, I'm seeing you. And when you look at the human development, the history of human development, you discover that man evolved or developed according to how he was able to understand his natural environment. For instance, before now, people believed that the cause of diseases were demons or some abstract beings and all that. But today, with the breakthrough of naturalism through science, we've been able to understand that germs, pathogens and all that, they are the things that cause diseases and all that. You look at Africa, people are dying every year from common malaria. Has Christianity been able to provide a solution to that? It is through naturalism, through observation and study of the nature of the body of man, that man has been able to develop vaccines and drugs for different diseases and ailments and all that. And Christianity is even new to the game. Christianity is new to the game. And when you look at what I said earlier, when you come to Africa, it was in the 1970s that this new wave of Christianity blew into Africa that has destroyed Africa. Now, what do we need in Africa? In my closing statements, I made reference to what we need in Africa. When you look at countries like Japan, you look at Sweden, Australia, China, we depend on them for everything. You know why? Because we have refused to embrace humanistic ideas, which is observing things, looking at our environment, and looking at how we can adapt to this environment through observation and understanding ourselves and the environment. But Christianity is only looking at the problem of morality. But morality is not a problem. Christianity sees morality as, but they've not been able to solve it. Because even like today, the news came in of a popular Nigerian footballer, Olerewaju, that he did DNA and his 3 kids, they don't belong to him, they belong to the wife's pastor. You can see these are some of the problems. So the issue of morality can only be solved, you know, not by dogmas, believing in dogmas, thou shalt not, some rules, some sets of rules, and even the rules in the Bible about love your neighbor or yourself, they were found in Africa. Look at the 48 laws of Mahat and all that. Precede, you know, the Christianity's laws and all that. In Egypt precede the Jewish Judaism from which Christianity was created. So all of these principles, they were there. All of these laws, they've been there. Even Christianity was actually plagiarized these things and tried to make it its own, but it has never worked, because what does not belong to you, you can't do any good thing with it. Now, looking at Africa right now, the poverty in Africa is so much. Look at churches Genesis, all over the place.
Genesis, before you continue, maybe he can get something in, because this is the discussion section. Let him get something in, and then you can continue.
Yeah, so for me, just coming back to the Greek philosophers, you know, those guys actually believed in the existence of God. Plato believed in the existence of God. Socrates believed in the existence of God. And I think it's also very important that we understand as well that if you look at the scientific revolution that took place in Europe, you had people like Isaac Newton, those people believed in the existence of God. Galileo, those people believed in the existence of God.
I have proof that Isaac Newton was just hiding under the cover of Christianity because to avoid persecution.
I guess
how do we have a dialogue when it's my turn to talk?
Maybe Landisa, you can finish, and then maybe Genesis, you can pick up on the Isaac Newton issue. Maybe Landisa, you can finish.
Okay, let's have a respectable debate. So even if you look at the solutions that are provided to Africa, for an example, we begin with ideas of Pan-Africanism, right? All those ideas emerge out of the church. You look at even the civil rights movement, right? People like Dr. King, all of those things are born out of the church. Even here in South Africa, for an example, I'm staying here in East London, and there's a university called the University of Fort Hare, Lovedale College. Initially, a college built by the missionaries. The missionaries built most of, you know, the hospitals in South Africa, lots of institutions of learning. In fact, the University of Fort Hare, you know, produced people like Nelson Mandela. They all come out of that formerly missionary school. You look at even the former president of Zimbabwe, President Mugabe, and so many people who were liberation fighters. Look at the ANC, the oldest liberation movement that began to move Africa towards liberation. All of those movements, in fact, the ANC, born in the church, the first president of the ANC is a Christian person. And so it's really for us, we believe that the ideas in the Bible are what triggered the scientific revolution. The ideas of the belief in the existence of God, that's what made, you know, Socrates, Plato to have a different worldview than most of the Greeks, because the Greeks believed in multiple gods, but the philosophers, we see that they always spoke about, you know, one God. So there was a slight variation. So we do believe, even if you go to Asia, he mentioned Japan, but just next to Japan, you've got North Korea, which is mostly actually atheistic country, but South Korea, majority Christian nation, and it's thriving and it's doing well. Even nations like Sweden, these are formerly Christian countries who first had a Christian worldview, and the Christian worldview helped them to develop these values. But I think what they did is to then begin to leave the Christian worldview. But at the foundation, what we see is actually a Christian worldview that helps people to see the world in the right way. And then they begin to have these discoveries, the same way with Newton and with Galileo.
And so maybe just before you can continue there, I wanted to ask a question as that has been asked on the chat, because now I'm trying to do both the discussion as well as Q&A. So there's only one question from the YouTube live stream. And Dean is asking, and I guess this question is probably just to and this. And Dean Kruger is asking, what has taken all the time you need? So that's Dean Kruger. I guess maybe you have a rough idea on what it is. Yeah, I guess it's for you really. And I think maybe you can maybe just a quick response, and then Genesis.
Sorry,
comment
I didn't hear the question. Sorry, I didn't hear the question. Sorry.
Also, so Dean Kruger is asking, like, is there anything God has done for Africa? Okay. And so I think it was a bit of a cheeky comment on take all the time you need. So I think we know what he's referring to by that. But so like maybe Lwandiso, don't take all the time you need, just like a minute response of what you think God has done for
I think
Africa.
I've already answered that one. You know, he's given us Pan-Africanism, the buildings of health, for an example, facilities, the hospitals. When the missionaries arrived, the colonial sort of masters didn't actually want to build schools. They didn't want to educate. It was the missionaries that took it upon themselves to do all these sort of things. And so for me, not only the fact that, it was Christians who did these things, because we also believe that Christians are not perfect, and it's consistent with the Bible that all have sinned, right? So when Christians fail. But for me, I think that the worldview that better explains reality is the worldview really that will provide the solutions for Africa. And I think that Christianity does give us those solutions.
All right, Genesis, I believe you maybe have a contrary view to that. Maybe what do you think?
Yes, that is what Christians always say, build schools and all that. Schools were built. You go and look at the foundation and origin of schools and all that. We all know that the missionaries were brought in by the colonial masters to use them for their own purpose. And we can see the effect in Africa today. God has not done anything for Africa. We are suffering poverty. We are behind the world in everything, going to church, over 45,000 churches in Africa, no industries and all that. So what do you call that? So for me, Christianity has not done anything. And all those things you talk about, they are products of humanistic ideas that Christianity tried to copy and use to dominate the world, but it has failed.
Can I jump in?
Maybe you can jump in.
I mean, it's up to you. I don't want to disrupt.
No, you can't say anything again. Sorry. You can't say anything again on that now. We have done that. That is past. So we can move on.
So I guess like maybe there was an issue that Genesis had raised on some people like Newton being secret naturalists or something. And so like there was this idea of it was naturalism that was enabling them, not Christianity. I think that's something that he had mentioned. So maybe he can, I don't know if you would like to comment on that.
Me,
I think
we are
about to get to the end of the discussion. Maybe Genesis can expound on.
Yes, let me expand on it. Like Newton said, Newton believes, he illustrated that humanist ideal that man may use his own inherent reason and logic to solve complex problems in the world around him. These were the views expressed by Sir Isaac Newton, and there were secret letters that he wrote to his friend. You can Google that. You can check on that, to his friend about what was happening, about issues of his faith and his beliefs and all of that. We all know the persecution that happened during the Dark Ages into the time before the Enlightenment began. The Enlightenment was revolutionary humanistic ideas that were, contrary to the Christian worldview and Christian beliefs at that time that led to all of this. I mentioned the case of Luther, who made 95 Theses because he had other humanistic, he was influenced by humanistic ideas from Greek philosophy of society, how society works. Look at democracy that is in Africa. Is it Christianity that brought democracy? Is it Christianity? No. Christianity has nothing to do with that. So Isaac Newton was a humanist at heart, but because of persecution, he was like Christian. He was into Christianity as a face cover.
So
maybe Landito, you can respond to that, and then I go to the next question. Just a short response.
yeah, I think what he's calling humanistic or naturalistic for me is what we would call science, and we definitely, understand that Newton understood science and faith to be things that are compatible with each other. They never saw, those things to be at odds with each other. So, for an example, the answers that would be answered by religion would, pertain to, where did I come from? Who am I? Where am I going? What happens in the afterlife? But then when it came to science, it was really about observing the universe. It was understanding how the universe works. And I think even with just things in general, like a general success, you might find that a Christian, for an example, is unsuccessful and maybe a non-Christian is more successful. And that person might be successful because they've understood how the world works, in that kind of scientific way. But it's not something that is incompatible with belief. And so even when we look at Africa, I think for me, the minute we say Africans, look, Africa is behind and all these things are happening and it's because of someone else, that means that it must be someone else again who comes to fix it. It must be, white people. It's almost like saying the solution is always out there. But I think what Christianity says is that you need to change and then the world will begin to change. It's not always a problem that let's blame Christianity, let's blame that one, let's blame that one. But I think that when Africans begin to see that, man, I am fallen, I've drifted away from God, I'm broken, therefore I'm breaking other people. And when I begin to find wholeness, then when I'm whole, I can begin to change my life, I can change my family, I can change my community, I can change my continent. For Christianity, that's how it works. But there are things that I think are compatible with Christianity. For an example, you mentioned that morality is universal, and we do agree. If you heard me speaking earlier on, I said, in Southern Africa, we have the concept of Ubuntu, right? You don't need to believe that God exists to know that right and wrong. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying, that's not what we're saying, eh? But what we're saying is if God does not exist, well, does it matter if I'm colonizing somebody? Does it matter if there's a dog drowning and there's a human being drowning? If I save the dog, in the end, both the dog and the human being are going to die in the grave. So ultimately, there's no meaning. It doesn't matter. And so, if I'm also a product of the natural world, why am I more valuable than the dog? So for me, those things cannot be provided. You cannot get a coherent worldview for Africans. I always make the example, if there is a white person, we have a lot of them in South Africa, and he's driving in his car and they are like, there's a black person at the back of the car and there's a dog in front. Is he wrong?
I think you're taking so
if
much
he's
time.
wrong, why is he wrong? Right? Those are the questions.
I think I can ask him one question. Are you aware that Newton did not believe in the Trinity and Jesus Christ?
Sorry, Genesis. That's an interesting question, but just to prevent it from going outside the topic, I wanted to ask a question that has been asked on the YouTube live stream. And in fact, I'm trying to ask a double question. So it's a comment, actually. And I think maybe it's a comment maybe for you to respond to. He's saying that he's talking about how one of the foremost atheists in the world is describing himself as a cultural Christian. So that's a comment that is made. And I think you guys probably know what he's referring to. Richard Dawkins was talking about how, I think he was comparing religions, and he was saying that he would, if he was pressed to the wall, he would rather identify with Christianity. I think maybe, I'm assuming both of you have like saw that tweet from Richard Dawkins. So like he's just asking for a quick comment on that. So I'm asking for, because I think time is up, and I want us to get to the final statements. So literally, I would just want a 30-second response from both of you, like literally 30 seconds. So what do you think about that comment from Richard Dawkins, Genesis? And then Lwandiso can comment.
For me, I've listened to Richard Dawkins even till today, and I've never seen such a comment from him anywhere. But the issue is this: the latest thing I saw from him was his debate with his issues with Ayan, who said she has become a Christian, but could not give reasons why she was a Christian. So he said something, talked about the fact that Christianity has done. What happened was talking about during the Renaissance, you see paintings of churches and all that, brought about, light to the arts, and all that. But actually, he sees the fact that Christianity is a problem, and himself, he said he would rather die than identify with such a brutal God as the God of Christianity.
And so maybe Lwandiso, you can unmute and then just maybe even a 15-second response if possible, because we want to get into the closing statement.
I was going to say, I heard the statement from Richard Dawkins, and I think it's consistent with what I've been saying, that even in Europe, that the countries that have moved away from Christianity, all of them have been shaped by Christianity. And some of them, without even knowing it, I'm not quite sure. There was a scientist, a historian that recently made a documentary talking about the fact that Christianity has shaped Western civilization. And I think it's that worldview that we need to embrace. And that's that worldview that's going to shape Africa. But I think the reason why Africa hasn't actually, fully become, developed is the fact that we haven't fully embraced Christianity at all. But I think there's also even just distorted versions of Christianity that we have seen. And so the worldview for me that has developed, the scientific revolution, developed Europe, like Richard Dawkins is saying, I mean, that he'd rather live in a Christian nation. And I think it goes back to confirm what we're saying, that all of these things have been shaped by Christianity.
And so like right now we can get to the final statements, unfortunately. But before we get to the final statements, I just, on a very light note, it seems there's a battle between Amapiano and Afrobeat to see which one is the most superior. And so, like, I think this debate is showing us. I'm just, no, I'm just on a very light note so that we can.
Afrobeat is the father. Right. There's no dispute. Afrobeat is the father. Yeah. When did Amapiano come out? Amapiano has already faded before it came out. Afrobeat on the top chart. Our artists brought out. They even gave flavor to Afrobeat. Without Nigerian artists, no Afrobeat. Nobody would have known Amapiano. And that's
all right.
The fact.
So Genesis now wins the debate because he has proven Afrobeat to Amapiano.
Everybody knows that.
No, but on a serious note, we can now get to, before we get to the final statements, I want you to give, in 1 minute, what do you think is the strongest argument on the other side? So like with regards to which worldview comports to reality and which one gives solutions to Africa. I know you might probably not want to answer this question, but now, Lwandiso, which is Genesis's strongest argument, and Genesis, which is Lwandiso's strongest argument? 15-second response.
So I think that, in history, the lines are always blurred. And so sometimes some things can be defined maybe from a certain angle that people see things. And so I think that, some of the things attributed either to the Greek philosophers or attributed to people like Martin Luther, looking at it from a certain angle, you can make that case. So I would say that the angle that he presented was a smart way to make an argument when it comes to, some of these people.
All right, and Genesis, which one is Lwandiso's strongest argument?
His strongest argument is the issue that Christianity gave birth to science and philosophy and all that, which is actually not true, because historically you can verify the facts that I presented, where all of these ideas that are driving humanity currently, where they are from, and how a rediscovery of these ideas is what is even causing us to have this debate.
All right, and now, Lwandiso, you can make, and this one I will time, 1 minute open closing statement. If it's even possible to summarize all we've discussed in 1 minute. So I'll time you now.
Okay, thank you so much. So for me, in closing, I think it's important as well that we understand that when you say there is no God, you have to first define who God is. But if you can't define who God is, then you can't actually say this person is not there, because you got to know who we're talking about. And I think that sometimes people don't understand what we mean when we're talking about God. We're not talking about someone who's created. I think also maybe coming back to some of the things that were put forward, for me, I think that in the forefront of development, I don't think there's been anyone who's completely been atheistic, who believed that there was no God. Even if we make the case that people like Newton were not Christian, but they were still theistic. And I think if you weigh a scale between people who didn't believe in the existence of God and people who did, we will still find that there's a greater case that can be made for people who believe in the existence of God. And I think that Christianity has been at the forefront of the development of Africa, even talking about Africans themselves. And Africans are generally not atheistic. They are mostly theistic people. I mean, name one African who's been an atheist who's shaped or done anything, right? Because we can talk about Europe, but come to Africa and you'll find that it's African Christians that have made the biggest impact. And I challenge them to bring one African atheist that's made a big impact in relation to Christianity. It's inconsequential, really.
All right, Genesis, 1 minute of closing statements.
Okay.
Of what we discussed today.
The last statement you just made is the reason why Africa is underdeveloped, because humanistic ideas have been thrown out the window. And Christianity's worldview is like a man in a burning house trying to rescue everybody by jumping into the fire instead of finding a rational way to quench the fire to save everybody. Because Christianity is built on morality. And morality is not a problem in the world, because it's something that every human being can relate with. Like, he admitted to the fact that morality is universal. So how is that a problem? Because they want to control the world by making us to believe that there is one man upstairs that dictates how the world should go. But actually, in fact, it is humans that dictate how the world should go. And Christianity brought slavery to Africa. Christianity supported slavery. It's even supported in the Bible. So the worldview that comports with reality is what I have presented so far. Because when we begin to think, begin to use logic and reason, we will solve our problems in Africa. That is the only way. And Christianity does not present that. Thank you.
All right. I think this was a successful debate. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I think we've at least started the discussion, and I don't think we were expecting anyone to be swayed. I think this one it's more of starting conversations. And as we said, there's Bisrat, and we discussed earlier. We even showed Genesis your channel, African Enlightenment Center. So those who watch the recording again can look at your channel, and Lwandiso's channel, Bisrat for Africa. And I'm also with an organization called Apologetics Kenya. And there's also another one called Africa Center for Apologetics Research. And so there's a lot happening. And I'm glad that we have already finalized that Afrobeat is the backbone of the African economy. So like
I'm a piano.
And so I think the only problem is that you guys don't know Kenyan music. We have something called Gengeton. I don't know if you heard of it, so maybe you can look it up.
When Nigeria picks it up, bring it to Nigeria. We'll help you sell it. Bring it to Nigeria. We'll help you sell it.
They'll make it famous.
we should do that. We should do that. I think we should do that. But at least we'll be able to end it on a light note, and we've strongly disagreed, but we've respected one another. So
Thank
that's
you.
what I hope this channel will help to do in Africa. And so we can log out whenever we are ready, and we will end the live stream. So
Thank you to you, sir.
I'll be the last one to log out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Genesis.
very
All right.
much.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, my brother. Thank you.
All right.